Alright, hey, good evening everyone. Welcome to today's session. Alright, so as usual, I'll run through the market outlooks over here for the week. We'll talk about I would say highlight some of the opportunities, and then we'll see if you guys have any questions. Feel free to drop it into the comments section. Okay, on the chat, I'll be able to take a look at them as well, okay? Good, so let's start off with the dollar index outlook over here. Okay, so from wave perspective, overall view did not really change much since last week. We're still expecting the pullback phase over here. We're using the Fibonacci 38.2 as a key area, right? So that will put us around 104.88 or 104.90 as potentially where wave 4 would complete. And we're going to maintain a bearish bias overall and expect wave 5 to develop, right? So if I zoom out a little bit over here, what we're seeing is overall the 5 wave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is still intact, all right? And of course, if this just continue to pull back correctively this week and price is able to come towards like 104.90, that's the area that we want to look out for opportunities to sell. Okay, now obviously some platforms allow you to sell the dollar index directly, some may not, but it's fine, right? Because overall you get a picture of the dollar index. You can trade the dollar in some of the major pairs as well, okay? So over here, euro dollar and pound dollar, both in a overall directional bias, is going to be bullish. Okay, so you can see euro dollar over here is going to be a bullish 5-wave structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, wave 4 here, we're kind of expecting price to be supported around that 23.6 Fibonacci, which is around at 1.077. Okay, I mean, price is basically getting very, very close to that. If we can see price tag into that area this week, I would say high chance, right? That would probably happen. Then what we'll do is we'll go down to a lower time frame to sort or say search for a valid buy trade setup. Okay, so at the moment we don't really have that yet. This is euro dollar. Let me clean up. Okay, we do have a possible setup building up over here. You can see liquidity sweep. Price did take out this inner structure high. Okay, we do have some fair value gap here as well, so technically if this pulls back correctively, we may get a buy trade. But the aspect on the H4 here is price have yet to tag, right? I mean, again, really depends on how strict you are, because we did came a couple of pips, like 5 pips away from that 236. Okay, so there's no perfection in trading, right? I think we all know that. Okay, so the thing here is, are you gonna be taking this, or would you prefer to just wait for price to maybe come back down, do another sweep, then sort of an entry after that, when price really tagged that 236. Really up to individual, okay? But for me, I won't probably take this setup here for now, okay? I'll personally be maybe a little bit more patient to actually take the buy trade, right? So I'm not going to be rushing into that as of like what we're seeing today, okay? So that's the take on euro. GBP USD here, short term, we are still expecting that pullback. Okay, coming back towards the 236 as well, putting us around 1.2835, right? So kind of expecting a simple 1, 2, 3 before the pushback up. Okay, this one here actually yesterday morning, or say late morning afternoon, there was a setup, right? If you look at GBP USD over here, okay, there was a valid setup. We have this liquidity sweep, market break below that, and then pull back towards 67. That's usually where our entry is. Okay, we get a very decent reaction. Of course, right now the market seems to be pulling back. But this particular trade, I've shift stops to break even. Okay, and basically see how far this will eventually go. Are we gonna get out at break even, or are we having the opportunity to actually write this down, right? Okay. So this one here, you can see on a higher time frame, we are basically trading this pullback. Okay. So just being a little bit more cautious in the management of it. But anyway, you can see, you know, the initial reaction was very nice, right? Coming down almost hitting that previous swing low, which would give us about 1:2 risk to reward ratio. Okay, so that's also a very valid reason to just shift stops to break even. Okay, but overall, it's still gonna be a bullish bias. Okay, while we are trading the inner pullback, okay, when price eventually does come back down, we'll still be looking for the larger picture perspective, which is the bullish bias. Okay, yeah, so this is on GBP USD. Then we have Aussie as well, which we did briefly talk about this yesterday too, and then we kind of mentioned that, you know, we want to wait for price to really give us an impulsive push up for the valid buy setup, right? And I think after today we do get that, which is great, right? So kind of have like a little bit of follow through from yesterday and today. So Aussie dollar over here, you can see we are bullish bias. Structurally, we are looking at the tree wave, right? A, B, and then C, and then of course internally over here we are looking at 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're looking at this as an expanding flat as well, right? And then of course here we have a little bit of a crawlish, so we wanted to see that impulsive move to the upside, which today we did get it. Okay, we did get this impulsive push. You can see that, right? Obviously that also creates like value gap in as it breaks. So this is actually pretty nice of the setup, right? We have liquidity sweep, we have high time frame perspective, we have break of structure, we have the failure to get momentum, push to the upside. So obviously what we are waiting for is just for price to pull back, and then we can start to look for a setup, right? I mean, right now it's a little bit too early to pull in the fips because price is still basically at the very top. Okay, if this starts to U-turn a little bit, starts to show sign of retracement, then we can establish the near-term high. Of course, then we can start to pull in our fips, okay, to establish our entry points, stop loss, and take profits. Okay, so pay attention to Aussie. I think moving forward this week, very likely this would be one of the trade opportunities that we can get involved in. Okay. Dollar Canadian continued to remain bearish. Overall here, nothing much have changed. Okay, so we kind of continue to expect price to make a move lower. Okay, this one here actually last week we did have a trade on, you know, Thursday. Okay, Thursday was the one that got triggered in, right? So getting very close to the targets. Simple 1:2 risk to reward ratio. It's taking a little bit longer than the average trade. Usually on the hourly it takes about like 2 to 3 days. You know, but from Thursday until today, it's you know, discount the weekend obviously. Today is the 4th day, right? So it's slightly longer, but I think overall, you know, it's not a difficult trade as well because the initial reaction was pretty nice, right? So this one also I've shift stops to break even. You can even consider, you know, to trail profits if you want to. Okay. Or even consider targeting extended TP, right? Because the simple setup here, we're just looking at this low to get out of the trade. But of course, what you can look out for is like extended targets. Okay, you can use the flips, you can use the bottom of the channel structure for maybe take profit 2, take profit 3, right? Then you just manage the trade accordingly. All right, so that's on dollar CAD. Then we have dollar yen. Dollar yen here managed to actually break out of the channel structure, which give us a bullish kind of a bias, right? So what I would love to see before really committing to any of a buy trade from here is a corrective pullback, right? I mean, the market seems to signal the pullback has started. But I don't want this to come down impulsive, right? Because if this comes down too fast, then It's kind of like a V shape, which is not what I would love to see. Okay. So this would need a little bit of patience. Okay, this here would probably need to give it some time to really see if this is gonna be a corrective one before we take the trade, right? Which means you probably need to give it like maybe another 2 days, like tomorrow and then coming into Thursday. If this really is corrective, then you can consider going down to the hourly to look for a setup, right? Okay, I mean, this one is a pretty straightforward. You can see the swing high, that's a break of structure, that's your swing low, that's your swing high. So the idea is, of course, you have some fair value gaps at the bottom here as well. So, pulling that fib from low to high, and then if this comes down correctively, that would be a nice little entry opportunity, right? Okay, so pretty straightforward. The setup may be building there. Okay, and because this is an overall trend direction, I don't really need a kind of like liquidity sweep in terms of the entire setup, right? Because liquidity sweep is very, very important if you are looking at kind of a counter trend. But if you are looking at pro trend, right, which means that this is very obviously making higher high, higher low. You don't really need a fair value. You don't really need a liquidity sweep for entry criteria. Okay, so that's on the pound. That's on the dollar yen. May have something set up, but of course we just need to make sure that this pullback is corrective. Okay. Gold, gonna continue to expect the pullback. The only thing here is I think the shorter term time frame, if I bring it to the hourly, I'm not very confident in the setup. Okay. Yeah, in terms of like conditions and criteria, there are liquidity sweep, there is a break of structure. This might play into a nice little tree wave here, but I'm just not as confident as compared to silver. Okay, silver had a nice little reaction as of now. Yeah, because what I'm seeing is that this here is a little bit lacking of conviction of a pullback, right? It's very, very corrective in nature. So while we are expecting that short-term move towards this area, I think in terms of like setup, in terms of trade conviction, I don't have that. Okay, so I'm probably gonna kind of like not being involved in the gold pullback, at least from what I'm seeing right now. Okay, but of course, again, depending on the approach, the strategy that you are personally using, you might have something that allow you to trade it. So just sharing with you, the overall expectation is for price to actually make the pullback. Okay. Silver is the one that I think is a little bit neater, right? Because you can see this is carrying momentum. And I also kind of mentioned before, the bigger picture perspective on silver is very, very different from gold. Okay, gold is kind of breaking all-time high, but you can see silver here. We are technically not breaking this high yet, right? And this can even be seen as a possible 1, 2, 3, right? So if I'm gonna be like looking at the sell side on silver, I'm actually a little bit more convinced on the sell side, right? As compared to gold. Okay, so this one here, if you go down to the hourly, okay, we do have the setup as well, right? Again, very similar to gold. So if I'm gonna be like between these two, pick one, I'm actually a bit more comfortable with silver. Okay, so we have that liquidity sweep, we have that break of structure, and price is kind of pulling back right now. Okay, 67 is potentially where we can look for a setup. Okay, I mean on a high time frame, there are a little bit of fair value gap. Okay, you can see over here, right around that 61, which is around 33.6, right? So on a high time frame, that's your 61, but 67 is basically around there as well, the 3.7, more or less there. Okay, so again, it's not gonna be like exactly perfect, but this is potentially a valid one, right? So this one I think is worth looking into. I mean, by tomorrow report, for those of you in the trading those, then okay, probably you see this setup that I'm gonna put there tomorrow. Okay, so that's on silver. Crude oil breaking out. Okay, probably this is more of a genuine break. Okay, but I think the confirmation on this breakout here is we still want to see some sort of a corrective pullback first, right? I mean, this can be technically a leading diagonal, right? It's very ugly looking. It can also be a simple tree wave that looks something like that. Okay, I wouldn't want to kind of like fix the label at the moment, but this is very, very corrective in nature, which doesn't necessarily mean that it cannot be the start of a U-turn. Okay, it can also signal a reversal, but the confirmation is really a corrective pullback. Okay, if you can get a corrective pullback, then I'm more convinced that there are more upside for crude oil. Okay, S&P, I think it's pretty clear we are turning bullish. The idea of this is just simply wait for a pullback. Okay, then we'll be looking for the buy trade and everything, right? I mean, it's scary, this drop here, but I think overall, I've been highlighting, you know, I'm not really like super bearish on the equities. I don't expect it to be a bear market this year. I strongly believe that this year is going to hit another new high, right? So obviously, you know, pullback like this are not, you know, unusual, right? You can see happen a couple of times, right? In terms of like magnitude, kind of more or less the same, right? In fact, you know, it's almost like perfect. Okay, you can see this magnitude, this magnitude, this magnitude, kind of like equal. Okay, all this while, right? So again, okay, simple things like that might help, right? Yeah, so this one here, I think we're definitely focusing on the upside. Just need to wait for the pullback. Okay. Pound yen, I'm gonna be shifting to neutral. Price is currently testing that high. Right, so can this be a potential double top? Might be, right? But again, we need confirmation. So right now, I'm just neutral. I'm not gonna kind of like trade anything on this right now. Okay, odd yen, currently testing a key area at 61. Right, so what we can look out for is we can go down to the hourly and wait for a setup, which may happen soon, right? We kind of have this high here, we have this pullback. If the price goes up and then comes back down, break this, that's the setup, right? You can see that. Okay, so this might be building. You just need a little time, right? So maybe later part of this week, Friday, perhaps Thursday or Friday. So I'm keeping watch on this. Okay, but right now we don't have anything, right? Just have it in your watch list. Maybe by Thursday, Friday, something will pop up. Okay, then we have pound odd. Okay, so pound odd here is a little bit of an ambitious forecast, but I think pound odd here is probably developing kind of an ending diagonal, you know, structure. A bit ambitious. Reason is because there are also a couple of different structure it can develop, right? This can just simply be a double top and then this just make a move lower, right? But right now I'm just putting this here as a diagonal, which means we'll probably need to maintain neutral a longer period of time, because this comes down, this goes back up. We'll probably not trade it the way down. We're not going to trade it as it goes up, but maybe somewhere here we look to sell. Okay, so we need to be just a little bit more patient on this particular pair if, you know, this is something you're kind of interested in trading. Okay, because right now there's really nothing. Okay, Bitcoin here, this looks a little bit like a leading diagonal. Okay, so we're just waiting for the pullback. If you can get a corrective pullback, we're going to be bullish on Bitcoin. Okay, now let me show you the higher time frame perspective as well. This drop is scary, yes, no doubt about it, but it's still overall a pullback phase. Okay, look at the magnitude, right? Again, I kind of like just want to give you some reference and comparison. Okay, I mean, not all the same, but it's similar aspect in terms of like the equities, right? I mean, some drops look scary, but if you look at it from a higher time frame perspective, it's really just part of a pullback, right? I'm not saying that Bitcoin will forever go higher, but that view itself with this liquidity sweep and the market starts to reverse, we have some sign of a potential breakout of that trend line. Of course, if you take the aggressive one, it has already broken. So obviously we are not just like kind of like buying it now, right? We're also wanting to see some sort of a corrective pullback, okay, to increase the confirmation that this is indeed likely going higher before we kind of like kind of fully commit to the buy side of things. Okay. Yeah. So I think what we have right now is the pound dollar and the dollar CAD. Both of that trade is kind of like they're running. Aussie dollar very likely. I don't think tomorrow we'll be having the setup because it's still trading near the top. Maybe Thursday will be the time that this setup would establish itself. Silver definitely is more or less ready, okay, to place the pending order. Okay, odd yen is something that may be quite similar to Aussie dollar, moving closer towards like Thursday or Friday, right? So these are some of the things that we have right now on our watch list. Okay, quickly cover some of the indices as well. I think yesterday we did mention a bit here and there as well, so just kind of follow up a little bit on that. This one here in UK FTSE, the market did pull back up a bit, right? So what you want to be careful now is we might potentially get this to tag the 618, break this before the U-turn. Okay, so setup wise, you want to wait for price to really maybe take out this high. Okay, and then of course depending on how price is going to develop, right? If it gives you an inner low, take it out and then come back down and then break this inner low, that can be a valid setup. Okay, that means wait for price to correctively pull back, and then you sell that. Okay, so you have your liquidity sweep, you have your change of corrector, right? Inner structure shift. That can be a valid setup. Okay, for now, really nothing there other than potentially a three-wave structure, right? So the direction bias as of now, we are going to be focusing on the sell side. But in terms of like entry criteria, you still need to wait for a setup to establish first. Okay. Hang Seng, right? We talk about that as well. Of course, there's slight developments in price. Yeah, so that's the view. I think nothing much has changed since yesterday. Okay, if you can get a corrective pullback, that's something we're still going to be looking out for, right? Okay, so that's on Hang Seng. Yeah, I think overall Nikkei it's probably more or less the same. Again, whether the price would pull back all the way to 15 6.8, not necessary all the time, right? It's just a simple projection. Okay. Yeah, so this one here, three-way structure, we're still expecting that. Okay. Yeah, nothing much, right? Yeah, so indices, for those of you who are interested, I think FTSE, Hang Seng would be the one to look out for. Okay, New Zealand dollar. Okay, I think that's the take on Kiwi. Oops. Okay, let's take on Kiwi. Probably expecting more downside from here. Okay, so completion of 3-wave, we have this impulsive drop. Okay, if you can get a pullback, 15618, that will be the area of interest. Okay, and then you can start to look for a setup within that zone. Okay, Euro Pound coming into the key area already. Okay. Okay, so on the lower time frame, right? We are already in a key area, right? So what you want to look out for on the lower time frame is some sort of a break to the downside. You have this as a high. Okay, then you want a market to kind of reverse and break that high. Okay, and then wait for a corrective pullback. That's your entry to look for upside. Okay, so that's the model, right? Liquidity sweep, break of structure, corrective pullback. That's your setup to go long. Right, and we're already in the key area, so that's great. Okay, so that's the view on Euro Pound. All good? Any other questions that you guys have? Any questions? All good? Okay, if no other questions, generally that's about it from me. Let me just see. Okay, it's a pretty short one. But again, just going directly straight to the markets. Those are the few things I think it's worth noting. Okay, yeah. So there are a couple of things already mentioned. I mean, a couple of things are already active. Then, there are like 2 to 3 of them that I think it's worth keeping a close watch for the week. Hopefully, if that's set up nicely, then we'll get a trade opportunity, right? Okay. Yeah, so if there's nothing else, that's all from me for today's session over here then. Okay, all the best and keep a lookout on the markets and we'll see you guys in the next one, yeah? Okay, good night. Bye.